Hey everyone, this is part 2 of a Live Through This interview with poet, performance artist, and writer Nicole Blackman. You're talking about like that girl that sort of cut herself, you know, secretly underneath her bra and her underwear, and it's amazing to me how we walk outside and we try to look very normal, but then when we close the doors to our bedrooms, we do the most fucked up things.
Oh yeah, I do too.
And why do you think it is that sort of schizophrenic feel of disaster under closed doors, but the illusion of perfection on the street? And
I don't
especially
know. I've been struggling with that my whole life, honestly. Although I'm not, anorexic, cutter, burner. I mean, I can't even handle getting, my booster shots. I mean, the cutting thing, paper cuts just drive me crazy. Yeah, although it's never been, to an extent like that, I completely understand that, because the idea of sort of keeping it all together and presenting a very public face, and then having a very private face where you go home and you fall apart, and the disemboweling feeling that you're a fraud, that if people knew who you really were, they wouldn't talk to you. And, if he really knew who I was, he wouldn't love me. And if my parents really knew what I did, they disown me. And that idea of compartmentalizing, I don't know. I can't really speak for anyone else's experience, only my own, but anyone who has more than one job feels that. Anyone who is, a daughter or a sister or a girlfriend or a neighbor, or you play very different roles. And I think as we become, more mature women, it only becomes more complex. As we become, mothers and or wives or girlfriends or business partners or volunteers or grandmothers or aunts or school teachers or whatever it is we become. I don't think that you can ever connect all of them. I think you basically have to revel in each role, and you have to feed and nurture each one of them, because it's kind of like having an Amazon army inside you that will save your life. And that's one of the things that I wrote about in Daughter. That is, that you are these dozen women, and you are the fuck up who's always 20 minutes late. But you're also the one who never forgets anyone's birthday, and you're the this, and you're the one who can't cook, but you're the one who knows the greatest restaurants in New York, and you're the one who, has a huge shoe collection, but you're the one who would lend them to anybody else. And so you are all these different dynamic things. And rather than waste so much time and energy, because I think it is a huge waste of trying to corral them all into being one thing, realize no one is one thing. You only see people as one thing because that's the side they're presenting to you. But revel in all those facets of your life, because that's what makes diamonds, shine more brilliantly.
What would you want to say to a young woman or a young man, anyone dealing with the issues you talk about in your essay, either anorexia, bulimia, or just feeling they don't have power or control over their own life? What would you say if they're dealing with that right now?
Find someone else that you can talk to. Whether it's a peer or a trusted advisor, whether it's a relative or something. If you don't feel safe talking to someone in your own family about it, find a support group. Whether it's somewhere in your community or online. I mean, I can't think of a single personal issue anyone could be going through that they could not find some sort of support group online. I mean, there's people to talk to. Start with that, and read something about it. See if you can, because there are lots and lots of books about the topics, like if you're a cutter, looking at books like Bright Red Scream and some other things, and not, although I hesitate sometimes to tell people to look at those, because sometimes they're looking at them, for tricks and tools and tactics. I've had to, burn one more beautifully. But in finding out that others have trod this path and others have survived, and they have some wisdom to impart on how to survive this and transform it. And it's hard to expect young people or adolescents or teenage girls, young women, to want to transform this struggle in their life, because often they don't necessarily want to. They want to just keep going without people knowing about it. So it's very difficult to encourage someone to get help, because they don't really think that they need help. So the question is really not to look at the symptom, but to look at the cause of it. So I won't even talk about the cutting or the burning or the anorexia, the bulimia, whatever, but to go to like, okay, well, how do you feel? What's going on in the family? What do you not have control over? Because dealing with that, the other stuff tends to fall by the wayside. Telling someone to stop cutting, well, then they're just going to start burning. They've got to find an outlet for it somewhere, or at least they feel that they do. So I usually like to skip that and go right to whatever the source is, and try and replace the behavior with something else that is rewarding and interesting, and yet feels as relieving. Whether that's painting, whether it's paintball, it could be anything. Often something really physical, to just work it out physically to the point of exhaustion. whether it means, hip-hop dancing or, capoeira or something that just physically just works this tension or exhilaration out of them until they're just completely drained and they just literally don't feel it anymore. Sometimes it's an emotional thing, sometimes it's a creative thing, but to find something else, somewhere else to put it so that they're not, forcing it on themselves, but they're finding somewhere else. Whether it's, I don't know, training horses or, running or painting or photography or making videos or anything else, to find a creative outlet, something else that they feel that they're good at, something that no one else does, something that no one else has control over. Whether it means that they're, hand-making books or they're making jewelry, doing something else that is just theirs, because once they have that sense of control over something, well, that's two things they have control over now, isn't it? And hopefully they'll replicate more things. And that is what really builds, a personal sense of identity, like this is who I am. I am more than just, cutting. I am also someone who makes beautiful earrings and sells them and makes money, selling them on eBay. And that's a very different kind of bridge. It's like I am also someone who makes books, and I'm also someone who runs a book club, and I am also someone who, goes out and started a picnic club at my high school, and I am also, so all those stepping stones, which is something that I talk about in the essay with Alice, all those little stepping stones of, what moves me forward, not keeps me where I am or moves me backward, but what moves me forward. What kind of woman do you want to be? Whom do you idolize? There's always the bracelets, WWJD, what would Jesus do? I always think, WWAD, what would Audrey do? What would Audrey Hepburn do really in this situation? Think about like, who are your heroines? What would Katharine Hepburn do in this? And she's like, wow, really, I don't, she's a sort of swapper. Who's your heroine? When you're stuck in a bad situation, when you're, at the prom and suddenly your date has left you, it's like, well, what would Tina Turner do? Think about that. Make a little heroine wall of like all these women and just looking about, today I'm going to live like Tina. What would Tina Turner do? What would she do? What would Gwen Stefani do? What would so-and-so do? And if you're not quite sure what the situation, requires, slip on someone else for a couple minutes. Be like, all right, what would Condoleezza Rice do? It's like, what would Michelle Obama be doing? Slip on someone else and see how it feels for a while. Sometimes that's how you figure out, the best path for you. But yeah, what would Tina Turner do? Think about that, really, honestly, What would Tori Amos do? What would Ani DeFranco do? Figure it out, I think it'd be sort of fantastic. I would enjoy that, What would Maggie Gyllenhaal do? I think it's a whole lot more interesting than me, But yeah, what would Audrey do? That's what I usually think. It's like, what would Audrey do? She's usually much more demure and classy than I am, but every now and then, she'll be like, what would Audrey do? She would turn like this and go, well, I think we're finished. Because I wrote most of those poems on a Saturday night sitting in my bedroom when I had nobody to hang out with. So that just proves that if I can do it, you can do it. So if you like one of my poems, go home and write one of your own. It's the best compliment you can give me. Write your own book.
Yay.